All right, let's kick this thing off. Thanks everybody for joining us today. You're here with SalesIntel and DemandMatrix, and we're presenting on the journey to success, how to build a winning strategy with data and insights. All right. You have with you today, my name is Jason Hubbard. I'm Vice President of Partnerships and Alliances here at SalesIntel. And we have Asher Matthew here with us, who's Vice President of Revenue and Operations. Welcome, Asher.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's not much to this deck. In fact, there's really only one slide. So we're going to keep this extremely conversational, which is my favorite kind of webinar to do. So always exciting to have somebody else who's an industry expert here with me, Asher. You were telling me yesterday, one of the things you like to have people do is take a screenshot of this and share it, see if they can get feedback or conversation going. Can you share with them what you guys have done in the past around that?
Yeah, totally. And just before I kick this thing off, a little bit about me. I've been in the data industry specifically for over a year now, but I've been a fan of data for a very long time. And the way I got involved in the data space is I was at a very fast-growing startup where we used to get tons and tons and tons of lead lists, and we would just worry about like, how do we get them routed to the right people and actioned. And then when I joined another company which worked on specifically lead routing, and there I figured out that it actually wasn't the routing that was the problem. I mean, routing is a problem, but if you sent the right data in, it would get routed to the right people automatically. But making sense of the data was still a problem. And so that's how I landed here at DemandMatrix. And for the last year or so, I've been working with companies of all sizes, from like the very largest of largest companies to early stage startups. We ourselves are in our humble beginnings, and I've been consuming a whole bunch of information on the use of data, the misnomers around data, the investment ties, what to watch out for, like all of that stuff. And so I'm excited to bring this conversation to you guys, because I could give you like 50 slides, or we could have a great conversation about like what we're seeing in the marketplace. And I would highly encourage you guys to put your questions in the chat section of this of Zoom. And we have Ajit, who runs marketing for DemandMatrix, who's probably going to share some jokes with us. If you don't like the joke, please say that you don't like it. We'll do a better job next time too. But our data really does do justice. So I wanted to just give a little bit of a background to who I am and how I got to where I'm at today, and I'm blessed to be able to share this information with you. I like to ask everybody to take a screenshot of the screen, like literally where we have, because to me, content should be ungated. It should be available for everybody. And I created this diagram after learning about the different types of data that exists in organizations, and it manifests itself in different shapes. Sometimes you can get it through tools, sometimes you could get it through lead lists, sometimes you could get it through data vendors or data partners, sometimes you could get it through your agency. But there is a data stack that exists in organizations. But I put this together. I would love for you to take screenshots of it, print it out, take notes on it, and if you have recommendations of how we can make this view better, drop us a note.
Perfect. All right, so we'll like I said, we'll keep it pretty conversational. We've got some questions that we're gonna go back and forth on. Like Asher mentioned, please drop any questions, any comments, anything like that as you have them in here. Given how informal the conversation this will be, we'll try and grab some of those in real time. And then if we don't get to those, then we'll leave aside a few minutes here at the end to be able to do dedicated Q&A. So Asher, I'm curious. I mean, obviously this year has been fairly chaotic for a lot of people. There's been a lot of shifting strategies, ways to try and deal with all of the stuff that's been going on. As we're finishing out the year and starting to turn to and look to 2021, What do you see as some of the leading or defining strategies for success going into next year for sales and marketing in particular?
Yeah, I'll give the data view in it because I believe there's a lot of different, like, let's call it technology or platform views from a sales tech stack and a martech stack view. Obviously, we're in the season right now where people have figured out how to deal with the pandemic, and now they're looking at the the new markets that have been generated, or how do they take advantage of the situation that's in front of us, and based on that, they're budgeting, and based on that budget, they're going to need tools and, let's call it, data and ammunition, let's call that data, to hit their goals. And so what I have seen in the last like year or so, the biggest change is people have gone away from getting mass quantities of data and then just pushing it into their data warehouse or wherever they're storing the data, and they've started to become very specific. Now we can say it's because of account-based marketing or account-based sales, but there has been a push from data consumers on the quality of the data that they are getting and how do they use that data to tell a story, is where the market is headed now, or where I would say the best performing teams are headed now. There's a certain segment of the best performing teams that have been trying to do this for years, and I'm pretty proud of my team from back in the days at Avalara, who was also trying to do this back then. We just didn't have the quality of the data that we have available today. But I would say that it's less is more. Quality is way more important than quantity, and people are taking a deeper dive into the accounts that really matter to them and trying to uncover insights about those accounts that they can be better prepared for conversations with their prospects and customers.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've had this conversation a lot, and what I've seen so far this year has been, it's not like the rules of the game have changed really at all. It's that the environment is a whole lot less forgiving if you're taking the easy route. You're being lazy. You're not following best practices. And so that's where I see a lot of people doing what you're describing of really adopting what have always been the best practices. So, account-based marketing, account-based sales, using advanced data signals, prioritizing higher quality, more reliable data, learning how to prioritize accounts better, doing advanced segmentation, customizing their outreach, content, copy, stuff like that. So, I mean, all of the things we've all been trained to know we should be doing. But a lot of us were able to, maybe get away with not doing those things or following those best practices. And sort of the strategy you were talking about, consuming as much data, running as many people through the system as humanly possible, and just being able to assume or count on enough people coming out the other end of that. That strategy is not nearly as effective as it used to be, especially as everything has progressed this year. And so it's really just forcing people to have to do those things that they really know they should be doing anyway.
I totally agree, and one of my other buddies shared the stat with me, and it was surprising to me that the average SMB has somewhere close to like 90 different tools that they use, and then the average mid-market company has somewhere between like 200 to 300 different tools that they use, right? And then the average enterprise company has somewhere like 1100 or 1200 different tools that you use, right? So it was interesting to see like all the different types of tools that people use. So I actually went and asked all of those same type of companies, how many data vendors do they deal with? And it was surprising. So the largest companies have anywhere between 357 to 425 different data vendors that they deal with. The SMB companies have anywhere between 50 to 75. The mid-market companies have anywhere between 50 to 75 different data vendors that they deal with. And the SMB companies have anywhere between 11 to 25 different data vendors that they're dealing with, whether it's through an API, whether it's through lead lists, whether it's to like funding partners to get those lead lists, whether it's through agencies. There's a lot of data buying happening. And for the life of me, I'm trying to figure out, like, why is that a problem? Like, why can't you go to like one or two or three different people and then get the data, right? And then that's where I started thinking about the data stack, and started to look at different data companies and their core competencies in producing quality data. It's interesting, right? Like it's hard to manage tech because you have to worry about like licensing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then how do you pinpoint like which data vendor's data is going through which campaign, and how does it like manifest itself through all the entire organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, anytime you're dealing with that many data sources, everything from the logistics of how do you ingest and consume it, how do you standardize the data, what's your most reliable data source, where are your best signals coming from, all of that stuff. Having that many data sources, that much tech stack really is a great demonstration of how far a lot of organizations have gone towards that. Let's just push as much volume through as we can,
Yep.
and then we'll see what comes out the other end of it. And that today is less forgiving than ever for having that sort of attitude. That's a great segue. Like, what are within those? What are some of the most important data signals? Types of data that you see that people should really be aware of, and that's going to be instrumental for them to be successful going into next year.
Yeah, so I like to think of this as categories, right? Because we've known about firmographic, demographic, technographic intent data, but I feel like the definitions of these categories get confused all the time. Like, I'm used to being a technographic data player or a partner. I'm used to people thinking of technographic data as just install-based data. And even though it's existed for a very long time, the quality of that data has increased even further as techniques of triangulating what install basis companies are using uh, is available. But even in the firmographic space, right, like the hierarchies like of companies, the locations of them, their digital footprints, like all of that data is now readily available and extremely high quality. You could say that the in the demographic data space, which is contact data, there are mobile device IDs now that can be mapped to contacts, or their personal email addresses can be connected to their work email addresses, right? All of that research work is happening right now so that we can target the right person with the right offer. And I'll take a little bit of segue on this topic, because I was having a conversation with a couple of analysts about this, and there's one view of the world which says, like, if you're going to gather all my data, you are actually uh, invading my privacy. But my view of that is actually, if I'm able to share as much data as I'm comfortable with sharing, then I can get much more relevant information that helps me move my business forward, right? And I do a podcast as well with very senior executives, and almost every one of those executives says the same thing. Asher, don't tell me what you can do for me. Can you just show it to me, right? Like, rather than send an email saying, can I do a discovery call? Can I do this? Can I do that? Like, why don't you just give me an example of what you potentially could do for me, and then we can have a conversation. Well, for me to do that for you, I need to get the data, right? It's kind of a catch-22. So I'll pause there to see what you think about this, Jason, before I talk about technographic and intent data.
Yeah, so I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and it's always a two-way street. I mean, people, you have to keep in mind, if you really want to lock down your data, and what information that people have access to, you're going to pay a cost for that, which is you're not going to have as much customization. You're not going to have as good of targeting. There's a lot of advantages that come to it. In fact, it's a lot of the way that the internet works, and works as efficiently as it does, is that we're able to take those signals about who you are, what you're interested in, and be able to tailor our content and our outreach. But the caveat to that on the side of the vendors is, you better well do that type of work to make it worthwhile. And it goes back to the just consuming lots and lots of data and then pushing lots of content, lots of emails, lots of phone calls out and doing it indiscriminately. That's what people get really tired of, and it's the reason why that stuff's not effective anymore. And the reason why you really need to dig in and have this type of information, this type of direction, so that you can customize it. You know what somebody's hot buttons are. You know what their needs are. You know what industry they're in, what their persona is, what their pain points are. You can really tailor your content, your outreach around that. Now, the dirty secret to that is that's not easy to do. There's a good reason why a lot of people take the easy route of just loading in as many people and spraying and hoping for the best. It takes time, it takes effort to do the research, to build your ICP profile, to do your segmentation, to go figure out what the pain points are, look at what's going on in that industry or that company specifically, build out the content around those things that you've identified. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but at the end of the day, the results more than justify that amount of work.
I totally agree. I mean, I even heard there's like 1 to 1 ABM, 1 to few ABM, and 1 to many ABM. And I just thought that's just marketing, because that's what we were doing before. So okay, let's move into the other half of the slide. So technographic data, just from a definition perspective, and I had our data scientists like educate me on this, but technographic data is anything related to the technology footprint of a company. And there's many different types of technographic data out there. Install base just happens to be one of them. And I always tell my my friends from back in the day that of all the startups that I was a part of, if we had high quality technographic data, not just install based data, we would have built those companies much faster, because the tech stack footprint allows us to start the conversation, but understanding what projects those companies are using, what skill sets they are either hiring for or they're deprecating, what type of money people are spending on certain technology, what's my share of wallet that's available, if I have partnerships, or if the people that I want to target have partnerships, are there truly partnerships where people, those partners have invested in enabling skill sets or creating practices around that technology, or is it just a sales and marketing partnership? Because the narrative of how I'm going to speak to those prospects changes based on that data. But all of this rich data exists today. Some of it is much further in its evolution than the other. Like, I'll give you an example. Base, like large quantity install base data, is readily available. You can get it from anywhere. There's a lot of out of the box shops out there. But highly accurate install based data, where a $10 million deal is at stake, you need to know the footprint. For that, you have to go to custom shops, right? We just happen to be one of them, but that's the level of difference that we have today. I fully expect that the market will move, or the customers will push the vendors to move to a place where all of this stuff can be done at scale. But that's the reality of where we are today. Just, do you have any comment on that before I go to intent?
No, I mean, I absolutely, being able to know the technology footprint is hugely important. We'll get into, some of the use cases, ways that you leverage these different types of data here in a minute. But yeah, intent, I think, is probably the one people are least familiar with. But it's also, if understood and leveraged correctly, and you've got a good intent data source, it can be one of the most effective ones. And at the end of the day, almost everybody's already using intent data of some sort. Anybody that's looking at email opens, link clicks, form fills, website visits, all of that stuff that you get with your sequencing and marketing automation tools and stuff like that, you're already consuming intent signals. They're just intent signals that are limited to your own website. Or additionally, if you're looking at third-party sites like a review site like G2 or Capterra or something like that, then you've got visibility into people that are visiting your profile potentially, as well as if you're paying for it in some instances, you can get some visibility into who's looking at competitors' profiles and stuff like that. These are all types of intent signals. And then you have some broader ones that allow you to be able to look at what people are doing outside of just those silos. But interested in hearing your thoughts around intent, Asher.
And so it's another one of those words that is, I would say, I almost feel like it's a parable. It means something different to everybody because they take something else different, what they're trying to solve for away from it, right? And but I tried to take what some of the analysts, people that are way smarter than me, have done as a framework for intent data and bucking it into first and third party. To me, like I would explain this to my daughter as everything that I own, that's the intent that I'm capturing from like my websites, my landing pages, my forums, my communities, my social media, my Twitter handle, like any of that stuff. That's first party intent data. It's internal. And then there's external intent data where you can get intent data from ad networks, or you can get intent data from co-op sites, or you can get intent data from mobile device IDs. There's a lot of third party, but from a framework perspective, if I could encourage everybody to think about like, what's mine, there's intent data coming from that, and what's the world's, there's intent data coming from that. And the best is actually to combine the two based on the go-to-market initiative. So sales will use intent data very differently. Marketing will use intent data very differently. Partnership teams will use intent data very differently, and customer success teams will use intent data very differently. Arguably, like if you talk to a CRO or a CMO, they will just say, hey, I'm either looking for a pre-sales or a pre-churn intent signal. Great, you can start there, but there's, again, advanced forms of intent data that are available in the marketplace. And I'll pause there, Jason, for what do you think about what I just said, and we can answer Gary's question right after that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely, and I think it's a great segue into the next piece, which is how do you actually effectively use these signals or these data points? And so you mentioned with intent the difference between how you would utilize or leverage that for sales versus marketing versus success. And perfect example, eating your own dog food here at SalesIntel. I use intent data signals as well as technographic data signals in two different contexts. So, technographic and intent signals for the purpose of sales and feeding my sales team, I will get really, really specific and get really dialed in so that I'm pulling stuff that's going to be as qualified as humanly possible. So examples would be like technographic, people that are using direct competitors to us. Or people that are looking for or showing intent around keywords that are tied extremely closely to people's pain points or people that would be looking for us. And those tend to be qualified enough, especially if you dial up your thresholds on those, to pass straight to SDRs for them to follow up directly with. Versus you can have stuff that's much broader, that's much further up the funnel, that's much less targeted intent. That's still extremely valuable and great to then hand off and feed into your marketing engine, and being able to then nurture and educate them with your content. And then that plays into those first party signals that we talked about. Who's actually opening those emails? Who's clicking on those links? Who's reading those blog posts? Who's signing up for webinars? Who's coming to your pricing page on the website? All of those additional signals that you can then use to qualify those and mark them as a marketing or sales qualified lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to answer Gary's question because I think it's a pertinent one to talk about right now. Gary's question is, what are the data appending matching keys? Is it the DUNS number? Is it the domain? Is it the tax ID? What works best? And with data, just like any other thing, the question is, it depends.
Yes.
because in a lot of cases, you may not have the DUNS number available But in most cases, you will have the DUNS number. If you have it, use that, right? But I also envision a world where there are a lot of companies that are going to get created that don't have any physical presence, especially in this environment, but they do have a website. So in those cases, and if you're targeting, let's call it digital natives, like startups that are coming up and fast-growing technology companies that are popping up all over the world, in that case, the primary key does specifically become a a domain name. We at DemandMatrix, we first use the domain name as a primary key, and then we encourage our customers who have DUNS numbers to then use the DUNS number, because people have built workflows off of DUNS numbers as well, right? So it'll be very hard to like move them off of that or advance them when there's a lot of research that goes into a DUNS number, because the DUNS number, for those who aren't familiar with this, also gives you insight into the financial performance of that company, whether they've been paying their invoices on time or not, right? So there's a lot of rich data that helps you understand, hey, you know, we like to do business with this company, and it's great because their technology stack seems like we can fit our technology into it. They have enough people, et cetera, et cetera. But not many companies actually think about, when I did go and do business with this company, what is their track record of paying invoices on time? Because that's a cash flow thing, right? So that's what I was saying, Jason, like as we're talking about the different use cases in the customer success world, you could potentially use the intent signal to determine, hey, are these people going to move off of my platform or not, or what's actually happening? But there's also other data, which is basically financial reporting data, that allows you to understand, hey, why is this person going to move off? Did they have a cash crunch? Or have they already started to pay their invoices? Are they taking much longer to pay their invoices than they were before, right? All of these trends, I feel like they need to go into the equation, and that's why I say the B2B data stack is huge. We're just like at the surface of exploring, because the technology is getting better to give us even that baseline data at a much accurate level.
Well, we're running out of time here a little bit, so I can hang around for a little bit longer. If anybody has questions for us, go ahead and pop those in, and we'll make sure to get to any of those. In the time that we have left, Asher, share with us if you had one pro tip as far as how best to leverage, these types of data signals and stuff like that. What would you share?
Man, that's really, really tough, right? But I will share this pro tip, especially for people where people are available in the cycle today, because everybody's thinking about how am I going to make my number next year, right? Because that's going to be a very pertinent conversation if it isn't already happening today, right? There's two things you can do. You can take advantage of lookalike modeling. And there's very specific lookalike modeling available in the marketplace today against all of these criteria, right? You could do revenue-based lookalike modeling. How many companies are out there that follow the same revenue band? You could do persona or title-based lookalike modeling. You could do tech stack-based lookalike modeling. You could do intent signal-based lookalike modeling. There's a lot of rich lookalike modeling now available in the marketplace. And it's okay if you don't have a data science team, because any one of the data vendors can help you with it today, right? That would be one pro tip. And then the second pro tip would be, as you go through this, really verify whether the data provider that you are getting the data from is really generating that data or not, right? Because it's important for you to know that, because you're going to have arguably questions around the data, and you want to know, or at least you want to have the comfort that when you do have those questions, because your sales teams and your marketing teams are going to ask you the questions about it, that you can get an answer ASAP. So those are, I think, two tips that you can use pretty effectively in the marketplace today to help you gear up for 2021.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're a couple of minutes over. I don't see any additional questions coming through. So, Asher, let's go ahead and wrap it up, man. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great time here. Whenever we share the recap, we'll have you'll have the deck here. You've got both of our email addresses on here. You can also reply to the email that's going to have the link to the recap. Any last parting thoughts, Asher?
Nope. Good luck and rock on with quality data.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Asher. It's been great.
Thanks for having me over, Jason. Bye.